The Marching Roundtable is proud to be an official media partner of Drum Corps International.
Thanks for coming to the Marching Roundtable YouTube channel, sharing great information to help you succeed in all the marching arts. While you're here, we hope you'll subscribe.
Let me let everybody in on one more thing that probably only the Corps knows at this point. I think it's cool and clever. So if you look at our show poster, the nature of being, and you look at how we spelt the word being, the E is actually based on the X chromosome. And our costume designer also designed that. And I looked at it, went, well, why isn't there a Y? And then it hit me. No matter what your chromosome makeup is, we all share the X. In our talking about what all ancient through modern day civilizations have, we as human species, we've learned how to communicate in a lot of different ways, a lot of different languages, a lot of different things. Well, we didn't want to represent a specific country or language, but we did want to celebrate just the human ability to speak and to create sounds vocally in a wide range of ways. So from the very beginning of the show, in the first minute, you hear throat singing, you hear different types of chant, you hear, some people call it takadimi, the counting system for tabla. You hear variations on that. And then that comes back 3 or 4 times throughout the show that's layered on top of things.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. We're talking drum corps today. Madison Scouts, one of everybody's favorite drum corps. Mark Waymire is here. Mark, how are you?
I am great. Glad to be sitting here in my Scouts baseball jersey.
I was just commenting on that jersey, everybody. If you haven't bought yourself one of those, go and get one from the Scouts, Suvies, online, or when you see them in person. That is a great shirt, and that is new to the Corps, isn't it?
It is. It is. And another connection, my dad was a baseball pitcher and really into baseball and really into the New York Yankees. So the pinstripes add a little love that's kind of personal. There's a 38 on the back, the year that the Corps was founded. So that's the number that's there. And then, of course, the Corps logo, which some people may or may not know, it's gone through iterations over the years. And the current one, Chris Comnick actually designed.
So the version of the fleur-de-lis is a little different?
I don't know how long this one has been in place, but if you go all the way back to 38 and look at the Corps history, yeah, there have been shifts and changes, as art has changed and just kind of graphic design has changed. But I think it's cool that our executive director is the person that designed it.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's wonderful. And Mark, you're the program coordinator for the Corps. And everybody, if you're getting to watch this on video, then you are not only seeing Mark's great short, but you're seeing a lot of beard coolness, I'll say. Your beard always looks amazing, Mark. So anyway, just a little aside.
I've got to keep up. Right?
So Scouts are having a great season again, of course. And the show is the nature of being. So how's the Corps doing? Like you're there with them from time, I'm sure. Like how do you feel? What's the vibe of the Corps? How's everybody feeling?
A lot of people ask that question, and it's a great question. This is my 22nd drum corps to be teaching. They're doing great. One of the things I will say about them, of all the corps I've taught, they're probably the ones that deal with adversity the most. They're just super resilient. We had a lot of rain, but being from the South, I love that it's really cool up in Wisconsin for move-ins.
Oh yeah.
But that comes with some rain, and you lose rehearsal, and you have to hustle into the gym and do that, and then this breaks down, and this doesn't happen, and they're super, super resilient, hard workers. Just a lot of fun to be around, and they love their show.
That's wonderful. And you can always tell when you see them perform if they love their show or not. And I certainly can tell that this year. I feel like resilience and grit is one of those things we learn from drum corps.
Oh, yeah.
Like you've been through it and you have survived and actually thrived through it. I feel like it's one of those great lessons that we all came away with.
I agree 100%. Sometimes I refer to it as drum corps resilience, that maybe you can learn that in other activities and doing other things, but I certainly know a lot of my drum corps friends that kind of have that grit, that ability to multitask when life throws, curveballs at you.
Well, yeah, and like life can be tricky and difficult and things don't go the way you want. And like you said, they're learning to pivot and just grit through it and keep going and not give up. And like this is a real thing that not everybody gets to learn when they're this age. And it has really served us all well.
And every season is different. I certainly have had those seasons where rain, 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 delay, delay, really, really hot, bus breakdowns and all that. And I've had those seasons where kind of everything went like clockwork. And if you do it long enough, you know that those are rare.
Right. Well, enjoy while you can, everybody. What is happening? So let's talk about the show. I'm sure you every year when you're putting together a show, it's sort of like, well, who do we have? What is this group? What's their vibe? Like, how did you guys arrive at the show you have this year?
I feel like to talk about this year, I got to talk a little bit about last year. Last year was my first year program coordinating for them after judging for DCI for a while. And I taught the Corps back in the early 2000s for 6 years and had a great time. Um, and I think a lot of people have done a lot of work over the decades to make the Madison Scouts the Madison Scouts. And that's kind of hard. It's hard to define. There's such an image, and I think you can talk about the Latin music, and you can talk about the Aussies, and you can talk about the Great Rifle Lions back in the day, and all those things. But there's an it factor that you can't quite describe, and somebody might use the word grit or swagger. That was one of Michael Zario's favorite words to describe just how the Corps comes across. And what's amazing to me is that it comes across that way and has with a lot of different designers and through the decades there that always seems to be this ism. So last year, got the design team together and I said, all right, first time we're going to talk about three things that we identify with Madison, no matter how old you are, what decade you're referencing. And we came up with the fact that there's usually always at least one thing that's really hummable that sticks with you. There's something about the music choices and something really sticks with you, whether you knew that tune ahead of time or not. The next was that it factor, that ability to somehow communicate how much they love the show, they love their Corps, they love performing. And the other thing was that word swagger. Just, how do we give them opportunity to explore what that means to them, no matter who they are, how much in their personality that swagger exists. And this being my eighth year with the Corps, separated by like a 10-year gap in there or longer than that. Even the people that would have defined themselves as really shy and humble and introverted, uh, I love seeing them come out of that and exploring that other part of them. Now, that may not be natural or normal to them, and they might use it in everyday life, but they find that that exists, and I think that's really special about the Scouts. If that's I'm trying to define what they are and who they are and what we want to be. So last year with Mosaic, we wanted to wear the Aussie again, although I will say that I did not make the decision. The person that designed uniforms for us made that decision. I put nothing on them, no restraints. And come to find out we're on the same page. We just needed to be a 2025 version, 2024 version of us, in as many ways as made sense for modern day drum corps. So the show Mosaic last year was very much about all the individuals, all the tiles that come together to make our grand picture, which is the 2024 Madison Scouts. So this year, I just had this thought before our first design meeting. What if we look at what's the most common between all of us, despite our differences, colors of our eyes, our hair, anything that's different, the things we like, the things we're good at, what makes us the same? And it sounds very elementary, but we're all part of the human species. And so we wanted to celebrate intellectually what that means. And so we first talked about, okay, so human species, what does that mean scientifically? So we talked about the DNA strand and genome mapping and genetic engineering and all these things. And we talked about chromosomes and all of that. Um, and then we said, okay, so what is the music? Well, last year we actually cut a tune, uh, and the members were not happy, but it was the right decision. So that tune ended up being our opener for this year, our part one, and it already offers this kind of world music, different culture vibe to it. It's a piece called Sati, performed by the Berkeley Indian Ensemble. And so that kind of, and it sounds somewhat, it sounds like Madison Scouts in a way. It actually was nominated for a Grammy. So that sound source and those sound ideas with us just celebrating the human species from ancient civilization to now in our own way. Um, I guess we're our own civilization. It's inspired by art, costuming, music of all civilizations that we felt inspired by. And I can't point to any one thing and says, well, this or that's this culture or that. It's just celebrating us as members of the human species.
Well, man, I'm loving that because I feel like, well, it just seems like this is something that we should be talking about a lot right now. The way the world is, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
let's remind everyone we're all really the same and we have so many things that are. So I love this sort of concept for right now in our world as something to think about. And I feel like that's something good for drum corps fans to remember too. It's like we talk about how different the activity can seem today. But man, I always tell people like, those kids are still dragging their suitcase while they have breakfast on the curb. Like it's the same cool drum corps experience. So we're all sort of the same in that world too. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure every drum corps talks about their drum corps family, and Madison certainly does. The corps that both you and I marched in certainly does, and those things can be unique. Uh, and I think in selling the show and continue to get the members to own the show, you talk about things that you don't necessarily release to the public. It's not part of your show description, but it does allow us to sit down and say, hey, this is a reminder. And we already embrace each other as the Madison Scouts family. But when there is that moment, I'm using an example for something that happened when someone has left all those goldfish crackers in your seat of the bus and didn't clean them up and you're irritated. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that person that, is not like you, and you're not quite sure how to deal with them? Well, go back to zero. I mean, they're a human being just like you are, and we all deserve all the great things that we deserve. And so we can talk about those things and add those to our day-to-day existence with each other, and talk about how that, is translated when we're not together, when we go home.
So how is this concept portrayed on the field? Because it's a great idea, and I hear that you've got this great music. So how, if I'm watching the show, how am I going to get these ideas of the nature of being, how we're
Let
all
me
the same?
Let me let everybody in on one more thing that probably only the core knows at this point. I think it's cool and clever. So if you look at our show poster, the nature of being, and you look at how we spelt the word being, the E is actually based on the X chromosome. Uh, and our costume designer also designed that. And I looked at it, went, well, why isn't there a Y? And then it hit me. No matter what your chromosome makeup is, we all share the X. So
That's
that
cool.
if we were taking it from our DNA all the way down to those chromosomes, even though someone may have XX, XY, or the other iterations of that exist in our population, every one of them share at least the X. So that's getting that down even more fundamentally to who we are as and what links us together as human species. I think the first thing, well, if you look at the costuming, the guard and the musician costuming, uh, again, just borrows from a lot of different cultures, so that we kind of are our own unique group. Um, that's an amalgamation of just lots of things that we thought fit together. Um, Clearly, the musicians are wearing their Aussies, and there is a fleur-de-lis, a half fleur-de-lis on the uniform, and it takes all the colors from the color guard and the flags and all of that and incorporates it. And if you'll notice on the shoulder piece, the fleur-de-lis then bleeds over into the DNA strand on their shoulder for the horn line.
Cool. Yeah.
For the guard, you'll see DNA strands worked into their costuming as well. Sometimes it's horizontal, sometimes it's vertical. Um, the props at the very beginning of the show, there's 10 of them, and if you can see them, they're upright at the very beginning of the show, and those are inspired by the DNA strand. So the spiral of the DNA strand is what inspired those. There are at least five, including a new ending drill set that was learned today,
Cool.
that sets in the show that are inspired by clearly the part of the DNA strand in a modern way that you would do that with drill. Um, the next thing I guess I would say is in our talking about what all ancient through modern day civilizations have, we as human species, we've learned how to communicate and in a lot of different ways, a lot of different languages, a lot of different things. Well, we didn't want to represent a specific country or language, but we did want to celebrate just the human ability to speak and to create sounds vocally in a wide range of ways. So from the very beginning of the show, in the first minute, you hear throat singing, you hear different types of chant, you hear, some people call it takadimi, the counting system for tabla. You hear variations on that. Um, and then that comes back 3 or 4 times throughout the show that's layered on top of things. There's a snare feature, and it's underneath that snare feature in part two. It's layered underneath some of the brass moments in many, many different variations. If you listen carefully, there's women's choir, there's men's choir. They're not singing words, it's just notes. There's some underlying, I've already said throat singing, there's underlying humming throughout the production. But if you took all the brass and all the percussion away and you just pushed the sound design and listened to all of those things, 90% of them are all produced by the human voice.
Wow, cool.
Our ability to communicate with one another and all the ways we could do that without actually using speech. We didn't want to go there. We wanted it to be very, very unique in that way.
Yeah, so the concept is very universal, and you're right. The ability for us to speak and make noises with our voices, that's a very cool layer to add to the concept. I like it.
Um, we move the props a lot, and they are large. And if they indeed represent the DNA strand, then we wanted to have a variation of relationships with that. So you see that we interact with them physically, we lay them down and they roll and they motivate. Sometimes it may be, there's a line in part two, there's a line of baritones that are moving across the field this way, and they're led by a rolling part of the DNA strand. There are times that we're around it, there are times that we are inside of it. At the end of the ballad, we put all them in a long row, and they actually eat the core, so to speak, like just the DNA strand coming over the top of them, so that in one snapshot at the end of the ballad, we are all not only in the individual DNA strands that are our props, they're all connected together, and we are all inside that connected together.
Neat. Yeah, great ideas. It's really interesting. So I will be able to, the viewer would be able to see this concept of the DNA strand running throughout the whole production in lots of very clever ways.
Absolutely, and including the body that the color guard does and the musicians do as well. If you take the DNA strand and you break it up into different shapes, you'll see this shape quite often in our, whether it's full body or it's just one part of the body or it's in pairs. You're going to see it in the very beginning of the show, and excuse me, several other places. You will see members standing next to each other, and their bodies making XX or XY, or individually just an X or individually a Y. You'll see a lot of that on our opening set, and then that comes back as a theme at times. And sometimes it's just really quick. We're doing something and somebody's in that Y shape and they go right off and do something else.
That's another sort of layer that we can all watch for.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of, let the show come to you. And if you want to see or read things into it that speak to you, I think that's awesome. Right? I think it's important. And if someone wants to look at something that, and they feel like, oh, that's part of the DNA strand, or that reminds me of this. We had an adjudicator that brought up that, he felt he'd go as far as listening to the music and how much we use some world music sounds and all that stuff to going, well, yeah, it's cliche, but music is the universal language, or at least we call it that, as maybe even a very obvious thread throughout the production.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, that had crossed my mind as you were talking earlier too, is that that's clearly universal and we are a musical activity. So tell me how the members have expressed to you that this has meaning for them. Like, how are they? You said they're responding to it. They love the show. Like, tell me, do you have any examples of ways that they're demonstrating that they get what you're doing?
Yeah. So winter being very different than when you and I marched. You see everybody like in December, and then you don't see the drumline or the color guard until April. And so, we revealed the repertoire early on, like we did last year. And then we told the corps about the show in detail in April. Not everybody was there. And there's just people that have missed some things along the way. So like our very first meeting about the show when we moved in, I said, is there a vet that marched last year who has really internalized the show this year, as at least what you guys know of it, and can tell everybody who hasn't heard anything about the show yet what it already means to you. And one of our very outgoing Symbol members stood up and explained what it meant to her as a performer. And she said, last year was all of us coming together to make this grand thing. And this year it's that again, but we're celebrating, and I want to celebrate who we are as much as I can. And it's about love and it's about connection. And of course everybody goes, oh, uh,
But that's a good theme. Like, again,
oh,
this
yeah.
is something I'm very happy to spend time with right now because I think we all need to be reminded of these themes. So I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Other people have come up and said different things to me that the show means to them. Unfortunately, we had a member that passed via an accident, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
that that's been mentioned to me several times. That the lesson is, it's not just this show, it's not just this year, it's not just these people. It's I need to take a worldview and bring this idea of, human species and sharing that together. If I can tell a story, I think this fits kind of where we're headed. A friend of mine from far up north came to visit my family who lives in the deep south and was talking to my mom and dad, uh, and didn't say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and it was perfectly fine with my parents, but it was unusual for me to hear and see that. If you're from the deep south, those are, that's term that's endearing, and it's not a you have to say it to me thing. Anyhow, got a
Or it's,
conversation.
that whole being polite thing
Yeah,
and being a Southern gentleman is certainly the way I was raised too. So I certainly understand what you're describing.
the conversation came up with what is Southern hospitality, and is there such a thing as Northern hospitality? And I will say yes, there is. We were right on the border of Minnesota, and I was able to connect with some alumni, and all my time that I've spent, with Madison, just there is a difference, but it's still incredibly friendly, and I think no one owns friendly. But so my friend asked my mom, so I'm curious. It seems like you guys talk to everybody. Like if you go to the grocery store and you don't know the person checking you out, you're going to have a conversation with them, or the drugstore, or the person on the street corner catching a bus. And that would be unusual where I live. Someone would feel like, wait, do I know you? Am I supposed to know you? Maybe they feel awkward, or they feel like you're trying to trick them into something. And my mom said, well, I can understand that. And he said, so what is it to you? And she said, and I forever remember mom saying this, she said, if I'm in someone else's space and they're in my space, because the universe has just caused that to happen, whether it's in the checkout line or on the sidewalk or wherever that is, I just want to recognize that I'm sharing space with another human being. And if I have an option just to smile or say hi, I think I'm adding to all the glee in the universe when I do that. It's like, yeah, mom, you go.
Wonderful. I love that. And it's true. I talk a lot to people about, we're bringing energy and presence to the world, and people will react to that. And I feel a responsibility to, whenever I can. And I mean, I'm not perfect on every day, but whenever I can, I try to do that. Like look people in the eye and be kind and present with them and say thank you or whatever. I enjoy those sort of good manners that I got growing up. I've had people tell me that I was very polite, and I'm like, well, I don't mind that. This is just the way I was raised as a Southern boy. But I love that idea of just sort of being kind and present with people who are in your space and you're sharing the world with them. And I feel like, again, this is a message that I love that is inherent in what you're trying to do because it's something that we all need to be reminded of. And maybe each of us can bring that to our little corner of the world and make that difference.
The show goes through several different moods, and we kind of have talked about them specifically with the members, and our show sheet to the education panel. We talk about that. There are moments that are really aggressive. People describe the beginning as tribal, and that's a word we've tried to avoid. But there's definitely a lot of movement, dance influenced, high energy to that moment. And there's moments of complete repose. I call them getting the roller coaster down to a full stop, at least for a few seconds. Um, and we purposefully wanted the end of the show, that music, to be the most celebratory. Um, so that as we go through all these different vibes and emotions and things that we hope bring a lot of joy to people in the show. I mean, there's even a moment in two where it starts to depart and becomes just kind of very fun. We have a contrabass feature that fits into the show perfectly, but it's this whole new version of happy and whatever, and it's fun on run through days when when everybody's really tired and we get to that moment and the staff starts reacting and dancing to it. We want at the end of the show when we get there to be very very celebratory, and of course my dear friend Scott Borma, Hall of Famer, I have to say that, greatly deserved. Uh, had an idea. He said, "Hey, how about I take the themes from the beginning of the show in the Sati piece, and we take themes from Toxic, and I make that kind of my own thing and really, really happy." And I'm like, as long as it includes a Barry Manilow keychain. Gene said, you know it will. So it does that. So I'm very, very pleased. It's very uplifting. It's very happy. It's very, very celebratory. And with the final set that we learned today, again are also visually embracing a form and actions that celebrate the DNA strand with all of us interacting into it. Something I had not said yet that also connects us. We talked a lot about, uh, again, the science of what it means to be part of the human species. And of course, all species, um, I think, have a heartbeat and breathe in the way that they breathe. And so that's also throughout the show a lot. You hear heartbeat a lot in the production, and you hear a lot of breathing. Sometimes it's just a long exhale. Sometimes it's a long inhale. Sometimes, if you listen carefully as we go into the ballad and the tempo is slowing, you hear a heartbeat that is slowing, and you hear breathing that slows, and then a huge exhale, and then Pyramid Song starts from Radiohead. So
Nice.
yeah, the throat singing and all that stuff linked together, but also using the heartbeat and human breath throughout the show as a audio thread. We think makes it all clever and
It's
fun.
Yeah, and it's cool because I love talking to designers like yourself, Mark, and sharing this conversation with people because, always like to remind people the great shows with the great groups. There's a lot of layers and a lot of thought. And you guys spend a lot of time having conversations and doing research and studying and thinking and arguing and figuring it all out. And then it becomes that's why these shows are the way they are, right? They have these layers, they have thought and meaning behind them. Even if, as you said, it's not specific, we still get the idea and we feel it, what you're trying to make us think about and feel. And I just like that you're demonstrating the amount of time and layers and thought that went into what we're going to see, what we are seeing this summer.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm still a note writer, and literally, I mean, there's a pile on my table. We had some visual conversations today, and it's at least 8 pages of me and a Sharpie just writing things down. I love that there's something I can do with the design team and our education team, and that is our assistant color guard caption head. I asked a question about a month ago. I said, I want to say something to you that I think the show represents in a very, very brief amount of time. And you say, well, yeah, it represents that to me, or absolutely, or, I see it this way, or I see it that way. And that's something else I love about the design process. And I love about our group of designers. We very much wanted to keep the team together. And there are a few new faces if you look at our education team and our design team, but by and large, we're 95, 96, 97% the same. And that is that once it starts coming together and you start playing the music and you start writing the drill and picking out flags, it can also take on its own personality. And I think I've experienced being in drum corps and not being on the design team, where I thought a lot of great ideas were left on the bus, and they didn't make it to the field. And so my philosophy is, if someone wants to walk up and says, "Hey, I have an idea," I want them to feel like they can be creative and tell me what that idea is. Now, it may not make it into the show, and depending on where they tell me that idea, I got an idea today that I'm like, it's July 10th. But a cool idea, I want them to feel that I'm listening and I'm celebrating their creativity. Um, the show also starts to morph, and sometimes it's the members. Something that our visual team does that I do with my band clients is they'll teach body in a way is, okay, in general, here's what we want you to do. And then you ask them to do that, and then you watch, and then you go, that one, no, that one. Their own creativity ends up being a part of the show because as they experimented with something that we said, all right, we want this to look uh, happy, celebratory, but very, very strong and muscular. And then they start exploring. So I like that we have a team and we've developed a culture. And that's not all me. That started before I came to the Corps, where they're very open. And I also think that brings a human side to it that they're also contributing in a way. Um, I don't know if you've seen the show yet, but we're using a slide trumpet. And that's in the show. But one, it's cool. It's really cool. And we're doing some cool things with the sound design with it. Uh, but that member said, "Hey, I own one of these and I play it." And Scott and I were
That's
like,
amazing.
"Make a video." And so they made a video of them playing it, and Scott and I were like, "Yeah, let's work this into the show."
Oh, it's very cool. And, unique, obviously, and not something we're going to see in every show.
Right? I would assume this is the first slide trumpet ever used in drum.
That's very cool. All right, now that gives me another reason I want to check this out. You mentioned in passing that you take notes with a Sharpie. I'm wondering why that is.
Uh, Gosh, I think in part because I'm an artist. Some of the art on the wall is mine. I paint, and there's just something about the thickness of it's right here of this
Yeah.
Sharpie.
He's got his
Uh,
hand, everybody.
yeah. Oh gosh.
You just like the way it feels and you're used to using it?
Yeah.
Do you
And
do some art with Sharpies?
uh, yeah, I've incorporated some art with Sharpies. I'm looking for a piece of paper right now with doodles all over it. I'm a doodler. So anyhow,
So were you that kid that always loved to draw back in the day when growing up?
absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. So predictable birthday and Christmas presents. I either got a paint by number or a box of crayons or a box of paint or colored pencils or yeah.
So how wonderful that those around you were supportive and encouraged that talent. That doesn't happen for everybody when they're an artist. I love that that happened for you.
Yeah, I am too, and I'm grateful. My sister's 3 years older than me. It was terrible having an older sister growing up, being the younger brother. Uh,
Oh, I had two older sisters, so I know of
oh
which you
God.
speak. But anyway,
But we got past that and love each other, and things are great. Um, I was out on the recess, out for recess. I think it was like third grade, and of course, she was in sixth grade, and they weren't allowed to play on our recess playground, and vice versa. And I was running back into my classroom, and I saw her, and she waved, and she made this motion, and then she gave me a thumbs up, and I'm like, "What is she doing?" Well, the sixth graders had gone to the library, and our teacher had posted a bunch of pictures that we had drawn. And I drew palm trees and mountains, and I wanted there to be this big bird that was flying over everything. And later that night, she said, "Mom and Dad, Mark drew this picture," and everybody in my class walked by to look at it. It was so amazing. Um, so I think I had some of those talents, and it was reinforced by my family. Um,
that's wonderful. Because like I said, not everybody gets that. So I love that you had that and they encouraged you. And I'm sure that happened all the way through all of your creative career then.
yeah, I mean, my dad can fix anything. Hey, Bob, I have a 1931 refrigerator. It's not running anymore. Can you check it out? 10 minutes later, it's going to be running.
Wow.
I don't have those skills, but the art creativity stuff, that's definitely
That's
me.
amazing that you just said that because that is exactly my experience. My father
Yeah,
could build or fix anything and he could make anything out of a piece of wood. And that wasn't my thing. I was a musician and I was out doing all the other stuff. But um, that's it. I really value and appreciate those talents that my father had for sure.
if I can make this about the scouts some more, that's another part of the team and the culture there. Um, if you're not praised for something that you're doing or trying to do, then you're gonna maybe walk away from it or not explore that. Um, and I think the team does a really good job of looking for that person that maybe is not your strongest performer and they do something really good, uh, just saying their name and saying, "Wow, that's the best I've seen you do that. That's the best." And maybe in any other situation, we tend to go, well, of course, that's what we're asking them to do. That's what they should do. But considering the individual, I think is part of the Scouts culture. And I'm not going to assume that it's not in other places. But I think this show and the theme helps remind us uh, how much we have in common, you know, and trying to make that, again, just part of our language, what we talk about every day.
I love that you just described that, because that's such good education, is to support the students and point out when they're really excelling and doing something great and giving them that boost of confidence. I think that's really awesome. Anything else about the show you want to say before we wrap this up?
Um, yeah, being a designer, I'm critical of my designs. I never have designed a show I didn't like. I never designed a show I wouldn't want to do. And this one's really special. This is really hitting. It's really exciting, and we have things we're tweaking and still cleaning and all that stuff. But some people our age or older complain that drum corps is not exciting anymore, and I think sometimes it's because they took 15 years off and they didn't watch it progress, and so it's hard to maybe enjoy the complexity at times and the layers. Um, I just get this sheer enjoyment every time I see or hear the core. I very much want the audience to have that experience. Cesar used to say that if there's one core, two cores, or three cores, he would name them that should attract people to finals week. It's the Madison Scouts, and we very much want to be that, but we also want to be competitive, and we're working to be competitive as well. But just the fact that the members seem to love the show as much, if not more, than the design team and me, is really great and really special. And hopefully that comes across every night.
Well, thank you for being a part of that design team, an important part of it, and for giving the students that experience this summer, for the whole thing that you're giving them, the experience of the show, the experience of the meaning of the show, the experience of the core and the culture. Thanks for being a part of that and doing your part to make such a great experience for them.
Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate being able to be on here and talk about, if not brag about, our members. It's why we do this, right? We want them to have the same, if not better, experience that we did. And like you said earlier, gosh, so many life skills I've learned. There's so many things that have happened positively for me because of the activity.
Yeah, and as you said, anybody, no matter when you march, if you see the corps out there on the field this summer, you have to remind yourself, this is the thing. They're having that experience that changed your life. They're having it now in this new, maybe slightly different form. But man, what it's going to do for them and for their life from here on out, it's really exciting. I love hearing about the show. The corps having a great year, and thank you for talking to me about it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.